I showed up on the first day of the job and the chairman said, okay, first order of business, welcome aboard, Chuck. We're so excited to have you. What kind of programs can we put in place so that we can make payroll next quarter? And I was like, don't ever assume that a lack of reply means a lack of interest. And it all goes back to a great story. Get into the trench in whatever element of business you're selling into, and don't be shy for being the last guy that turns out the lights when you go home at the end of the day. I learned how to run a business. I sat down, I didn't panic, and I said, okay, what do I got to do? And I figured it out and had success, and we exploded their revenues in just a couple of years.
Welcome to the Goat's Gravy Podcast.
All right, welcome back to another episode of The Goat's Gravy, the podcast for young professionals in sales and sales leadership. Scotty, we can never get our tech right. We need some help here, but
sell it.
We have a very exciting goat today from Scotty's network, longtime seller and in the tech world and software world. So you want to do the honors?
I'd love to. Chuck, how the heck are you?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you.
Very cool. Thanks for joining Billy and I on the Goat's Gravy. Really appreciate it. So, Billy, I got a little story on how I met Chuck, right? And
is this going to be a long story?
No, Chuck knows my stories are not long.
Your stories are
no,
long.
very crisp.
They're short and sweet. Usually like, where's the number at? But, you know, in December, Billy took on a new responsibility of the business, healthcare.
Yep.
And my boss, still my boss, great boss. She goes, what do you think? And I knew it's not like she didn't care what I thought, but I was getting healthcare.
Yeah.
And she goes, I got another piece of good news. We may be in a position for you to go hire a leader in healthcare. And I said, that's great. Let me get my hands around it. So just like you do, Billy, and Chuck, just like you've done in the past, you scour your network and you're as good as your network, I believe. And it's almost like this mythical creature. They started talking about this guy, Chuck, in a mythical way. And some people that Chuck worked with said, hey, if you could get Chuck, it would be a great fit for what we're up to at ServiceNow. I said, fantastic. So, Chuck, I talked to you in Rockford, Illinois on a Sunday.
I remember this.
And I tell Billy everything, good, bad, and indifferent. And him and I just hit it off.
Yeah.
And I was so excited because I think you're as good as your people. You're as good as your team. And I told my boss about it, and I told the VP about it. And they said to me, Chuck, this guy does seem mythical. I don't believe it. The best seller in the history of the prior company he worked for. So long story short, thank goodness he came over, and he's been doing a really good job with the team, made some great hires. And he's just a good dude. And Chuck, Billy and I laugh about this all the time. We're like, there's a couple people on your team. One, you look forward to the phone call when they call you. The other, where you're just going to, even though you're not on a call, you're going to click it and say, I'm not picking that up. And thus far, Chuck has been a pleasure. And it's really,
he's a rapid answer.
Yeah, it's great, man. Yeah. So Chuck, welcome, bud.
Chuck, I listened to him by a lot of campfires talk about how well you're doing. So let's start there, man. You have a very impressive career. You just left a role after 18 years, the same company, which feels unheard of. At least in my industry, medical device, we jump around quite a bit, but
yeah,
that's a long career, uber successful. And you just made the transition to join Scotty. I'd love to hear how that transition is going. And when you're starting over after 18 years in one place, describe kind of that world and how you've had to adjust, who you are as a seller and your playbook and all of that.
Sure. Yeah, I was definitely not looking for a job. I'm glad I took the call. Scotty and I hit it off right from the start. And, within 4 days, I had said yes and agreed to come on board and be part of his team. And, it was for all the things that we talk about with sellers, right? What gets you excited to go to work every day? What gets you motivated to attack the next, sales objective in front of you? And Scotty laid a really great picture out that made me re-energize. It was like the culmination of everything I've done in tech for the last 30 years coming together in a nice, neat package that allowed me to do all the things I've done well in different roles in this one great opportunity at a great company like ServiceNow. And after, I had a really fantastic year at my prior company. I was thinking about, what's next. And then this happened. And it was like, all right, I'm a man of faith. And I believe when the messages and the signs are there, you listen, right? And it just everything really fit. There's a lot of former team members of mine that had come to ServiceNow. They were all coming after me aggressively about how good this would be for me and for ServiceNow. And like I said, Scotty and I hit it off, and it's all about relationships at the end of the day, right? I mean, and this one was set from the first phone call on that one Sunday in December.
Dude, that's awesome. One follow-up only, I think it'd be helpful for our younger listeners, maybe in a similar situation. They've got 2 or 3 years in first role looking to make the next move. What was your main criteria, or how'd you work through the decision?
Um, it's funny. Over time, it's all about instincts, right? And for me, in my instincts have done me well over time. The instincts were just strong. I mean, I mean, I had a dream about it, about coming to service now. That's
Was it a dream or a nightmare, Chuck?
Yeah, it was a dream. It was an unbelievable dream about
Buddy
wow.
standing over you.
Yeah,
The
like,
forecast.
holy shit.
Forecast.
So great instincts. And some of it was, again, relationships, people I like and trust telling me and validating for me without me having to ask leading questions that it was the right thing to do. And man, it would be a perfect storm, so to speak. Me coming together with my experience, and then ServiceNow coming to the table with an opportunity that frankly I've been executing to for the last 20 years. It just a perfect storm, truly.
Yeah, and when you look at, because we're searching for a healthcare, subject matter expert, and you were really clear with me when I was talking to you. You had a lot of respect for your at that time current employer, a lot of respect, and they've done you well, and so it
Yeah.
wasn't about running from a company, and I think it was an opportunity. But when you look at the amount of time you've spent in healthcare, and a lot of our listeners are kind of early in career. Do they do tech? Do they do, med device? Do they stick with an industry? Like you've been a healthcare guy, if you will. What kind of advice would you give our listeners about sticking to an industry, or would you suggest when they're young to kind of try different ones? I don't know if there's a
So
right answer, but I'd love to hear it.
so I tried different ones when I first got started. And I spent before I came to my last employer, I had spent about a dozen years working as part of a team of leaders who would go into companies as a change agent, either to start small entrepreneurial software companies or fix them. And I was in a variety of industries at that time. And then the defining moment for me was when I stepped in to help a buddy of mine who was running a small software company out of Long Island, who was a content management platform. He brought me in for my small company startup experience, and he quickly realized this startup stuff was not for him. And he basically told the executive board, "Hey, I'm out. I'm not the right guy. Let Chuck do it. He's been doing this for a while." And I took stock in their clients, and I said to myself, for a company this size, they got clients everywhere, but basically financial services and healthcare were the two biggest areas for growth, as I saw it. So I doubled down, and we ended up, really doing some amazing stuff over a 6-year period. But it got me introduced to healthcare, and it got me deep in. Like really set my hooks into healthcare. And then once I had done that and established both my domain expertise and my relationships, um, it was very hard for me to make the move. Now that said, at my last employer, I entertained flipping over to a different industry because that industry needed some help. It was a struggling industry, and I was close to taking it. But then at the end of the day, the CEO said, "No way, man! You're doing too well in healthcare. We're not gonna screw that up." So I ended up not making that switch. But yeah, it's earlier on in the career, I think it's great to experiment and kind of pick up tools along the way. Let me pick up a little bit of tools here, a little bit of tools here, a little bit of tools there. put them in that tool belt, and then from there build your career. And that really paid off for me in spades.
Chuck, was there someone that really stood out as a strong mentor early on, that kind of gave you the guidance and direction that led you toward healthcare? Or I guess who would you say has been one of your biggest mentors along the way?
Yeah, there was a guy that I had spent the first chunk of my career in the '90s working for a software company that got acquired by CA Computer Associates, and I had phenomenal success there. I mean, I still can't believe it, but I was in my like 27, 28, and they had me running a massive business that I really was completely unprepared to manage. But because I was the top salesperson, they just promoted me. But there was a guy that from there I made a leap to go work for a startup or restart that was only doing about 2 million in business. And the guy that I went to work with was an unbelievable mentor. He taught me the business. He taught me the fundamentals of, managing it, from a P&L perspective. He taught me the fundamentals of making smart investments and where to be a little more, risk adverse and, more than just selling, right? I mean, and that to me is the difference in a company like ServiceNow. What I've experienced in my 5 months here is you got people that can sell and you got people that know how to run a business. And to me, that's what I really learned from this one mentor. And he and I used to meet even after I stopped working for him. I only stayed there for 2 years and then I got recruited to go do something else. We used to get together once a month for a really great steak at a place called Smith Brothers in Ridgewood, New Jersey, just because I had mad respect for this guy and we had just developed a great friendship. Unfortunately, he's been passed for about 10 years now, but man, it was a great mentor type of relationship that I had. And it's one of the reasons why I like doing stuff like this, paying it forward. And, I mentor, a handful of sales reps on a regular basis and they call me up when they need me. And, it's all part of the good karma that we all,
No
want,
doubt. And you're
you
a
know?
good karma guy, Chuck. I really believe that. You mentioned gut instinct when I met you at that lunch, right? Close to your house. I just knew. I knew it was right. Then I had to figure out how to afford you, which was a whole different ball of wax. But we got
I
through
remember
it.
that conversation too.
I'm like,
Yeah, I
geez,
was
this
like
guy's making some serious dough. He's making more than I am. But Chuck, the one thing I notice, and for our listeners out there, how do you were super customer centric when you came on board. Like day one, you were all about the customer, and that was a big part of kind of what I think your team stands for, and taking care of the customer, meeting the customer where they're at, spending time with the customer. And Billy, I'm just so impressed with like a lot of people that you've onboarded might sit back and kind of 30, 60, 90. Then I'm ready. This dude, I can't keep him in the seat. Like he's always in front of the customer, right? And and his team is looking at him saying, okay, if my leader's doing that. In fact, I told a story about you today, Chuck, unrelated to healthcare. But Chuck, the question is, what's your advice to a younger and career sales person on the balance between going out and really getting uncomfortable in front of the customer and really waiting till you kind of know what to say, studying, all that good stuff? What's your advice?
Yeah, my advice is, it's an expression I've used over the years. I should make a t-shirt out of it because I think it's a great t-shirt slogan, but, it's all about the human element of doing business. And that to me is something that I've made at the core of what I believe in, just because of the success I've had. And I'll give you an example, right? My perspective on the tech industry and dealing with executives and senior directors and everyone in between, most of these people just don't know how to buy technology, right? They don't know how to buy it. They don't have the same incentives that we have. Like we sell something, we get a commission, we get a bonus, but they buy something, they get nothing other than a project dropped on their desk that they probably don't know how to execute to. So what I learned early and often, probably from my first job, which completely unrelated to tech, it was financial services. Old boiler room, back in the 1980s, dialing for dollars, Gordon Gecko, all of that stuff. But we had to make 250 calls a day before we could go home. They kept track. Try that. Try 250 calls in a day once. I had to do it for 2 years. The point I'm trying to make is I got to the where I started to self-assess where I'm doing well and where I'm failing miserably. It was the times when I was empathetic and brought a human element to my interaction where it really clicked. And, my closing percentage when I was able to get in front of someone in person skyrocketed, literally like 90% success rate. And it just from then on, I've always been a metrics guy about keeping track of how many swings and how many hits and how many home runs and all of that good stuff. Especially as an athlete and a coach, I love the sports analogies. But um, I just am such a believer in the human element of doing business, showing someone that you're going to, in this day and age, especially, everyone sits behind their computer, does a lot of virtual web meetings. If I'm going to make the time to show up at your office, sometimes even unannounced, it just resonates. I mean, people gravitate to that. And there's just so many little tricks and tips that I believe that are necessary in this year of 2026. I mean, in the day of AI, you can get all the research you want at your fingertips. You can put together great letters and emails and all that kind of stuff. But if you show up to someone's office with a point of view that can help them get to an outcome where they're going to make a purchasing decision that's going to change the way that they're doing their job every day, they're never going to forget you. And I've just made it a really important part of the way I go to work every day.
Yeah, and Billy, I was telling Billy Chuck that, you're dropping things off, right, at maybe you don't have an appointment, you're a sales leader with, arguably a go-to-market leader. It's not like we're a startup,
No,
right? And you're going heel to toe, and you're dropping off handwritten letters to your, whoever you wanna talk to. Do you know many leaders that do that, Billy?
I mean, we try to be
Some,
intentional
probably.
about it because it's so important. But yeah, I mean, in general, not a lot anymore. I think a lot of people, it's kind of a lost art, but those that do it, I think benefit. But Chuck, great advice you're sharing with us. I mean, I couldn't agree anymore, especially the relationship piece. There's I always love the book, The Challenger Sale, and there's a lot of great reads out there we've talked about before. But at the end of the day, you can't replace that personal connection, especially in healthcare and medical device. I've just found that's really important, face in the place, whether it's driving a deal or supporting a surgery. If you spend time with those customers in person, you win their hearts and minds with credibility of how you show up. And that's just so important. And it's a skill that I think sometimes people jump to transaction too quick before they've earned
yeah.
the right to go there. And so I would love to dig in a little bit more because you've been doing this a long time and the world's changed, right? We're all trying to adapt and evolve. How have you changed? How has your own personal playbook or I guess strategy of how you approach the market change, or has it not really changed at all for you and you still kind of follow the same path?
I would say 90% of what I do hasn't changed. I've just had to use different tools to get to the outcomes that I'm getting to. And I'll give you an example. I'm just a massive believer in building a brand, an outbound brand that tells people who I am, and helps them understand what I bring to the table. So, for an example, every week I send communication out to all my top contacts. Kind of a not from from the desk of type of thing, but more from you know, hey Billy, I was watching CNBC and I was listening to this interview and it reminded me of the conversation you and I had about this, which triggered something that I wanted to share that I think is going to help you with that strategic imperative that you impressed upon me is so important this year. And by the way, I've got some ideas on how you can get there. And really, at the end of the day, what you're delivering is a point of view, and a sales pitch, but you're doing it in a way that's contextual, personal, and again tied to the fact that I've listened and I understand what matters. You may have told me this 6 months ago, but I'm not going to forget it because it's in my little Billy cheat sheet, notebook that I keep here. Um, and just keep playing that. And every week, I'm finding a reason to reach out to Billy to make sure Billy understands how important my relationship, wanting to have a relationship with Billy, is to me. And a great example is there's an executive that I'm really trying to take down at a top five healthcare company. Um, and I'm getting there slowly but surely. But one of the defining moments was I finally got the guy to meet with me. We met while we were both traveling in Nashville, and then I ran into him in the airport later that night. He's like, I came here after you, so clearly you're not following me. So this tells me something, right? But what I did after that is, he went a little quiet on me. So, I just kept hitting him with that stuff. And then he finally got back to me and say, listen, you really intrigued me with this point you made in your weekly newsletter last week. He called it a weekly newsletter. I found it interesting because that tells me, even though he hasn't replied, he's reading my weekly communication, and then, it just has led to, a prosperous, interaction. And Scott, this is the one that, Hannah talked about with Sean,
Yeah.
our,
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
and it's really come together nicely. Now, this is a guy that I didn't know, except for within the last year, even though he's been in the industry for years, we just haven't connected. And so, I mean, even at this stage of my career and all my experience and all my years and wrinkles and gray hair, it's the same thing, but it's just sharpening those tools, right? So, I'm still doing the weekly thought leadership. I'm still, I sent him a text on Father's Day, wishing him a happy Father's Day. He replied. I mean, here's a CIO replying to me on Father's Day.
That's awesome.
That's
You
really
know,
awesome, man. I
so
love the intentionality behind it. The other thing I found when you are really that focused and engaging with those customers over time, this is someone that today, as you're working to close it out, you're building a lot of credibility with. But fast forward a year from now, all this time and effort you're putting forward, this may be one of your biggest references for future customers down the road,
absolutely.
right? And that's the other thing is I always tell my team it's so important that we build those relationships because the easiest way to build pipeline is through your existing customers, right? If you're giving them a phenomenal experience and you ask them is there anyone else you should be talking to in their network, any of their buddies? It's amazing. They want to help you out and they're willing to do it. A lot of people are afraid to even ask.
Yeah. And I think Chuck, just listening to Chuck, right? Just sitting down at that lunch that we had before you took the job, you could just tell Billy there's an authenticity there. He's not like how many customers are so sick and tired of the slick sales guy that doesn't know shit.
Yeah.
Stuff.
They
Just say
don't
stuff.
know
Just say
anything.
stuff.
No, I'm saying shit to make a point. I'm not in third grade, William. But they just didn't do their homework. They don't know what to ask. And I love the customer that says that, and I've been in meetings where they've asked the team, I'm there with the team, do you guys even know what we do? By the way, that's not a good question to get, but
No.
they're just trying to validate and make a point. Like, you guys aren't prepared. You're just simply not prepared. So, one thing I think is a question for you, Chuck, is how do you find your authentic voice being a younger in career professional? It's not easy for everybody, right? They're nervous. They say things they think they should say. Any advice on how do you find your own authentic voice?
Yeah, I think the when I look back, the things that I did to find that authentic voice, it was about doing the grunt work, right? Like, for example, I know healthcare because, when a deal's done, two things happen. One, I say to myself, damn, I just lost a big chunk of my pipeline. There's a divot I got to fill, right? But then two, I say to myself, okay, what's the right way to engage in this implementation so that they understand, hey, this is not a transactional guy. This is a solution guy that's gonna hold my hand and work me through the process. And then when I can get on site, forget about my title and all that stuff. I'm not shy from running and getting water and making copies and and taking handwritten notes and keeping minutes, and I'm not just sitting there playing on my phone, right? I'm doing the grunt work to do a couple things. Let them know that humbly I'm part of the solution, I'm part of the problem. And two, that's how you learn the business. You learn the ins and outs and the nuances of the technology and the challenges that the client is going to go through. And you end up getting 5 more opportunities of pipeline, like you said before, Billy, right? I mean, it's almost like a referral, right? But you're earning that referral because you're listening to these, inception or elaboration phases where you break down use cases and into user stories and figuring out, how we're going to solve this problem in a way that's effective. And you really learn the organization. You learn where the power is. You learn who needs maybe a little more TLC and who you want to stay the hell away from because they're just going to blow stuff up no matter what you do, right? So I would be a grunt. I would be a sponge. I would get into the trench in whatever element of business you're selling into, and don't be shy for being the last guy that turns out the lights when you go home at the end of the day.
That's right. Dude, attitude and effort. You've got both. I absolutely love that. So if you kind of go back to the early days of selling, when was it that you felt like, okay, I've arrived, I've figured this out, your confidence is through the roof? What was it that led you to that point, and what advice do you have for a younger listener in the audience of how do they get there faster?
Um, I would say it was the job I left after Associates. When I went to work at that company, I was running this $100 million business for CA, had no idea what the hell I was doing. I was just a really good salesperson who got promoted a bunch of times. Thought I was, the greatest, and got talked into going to, work for this $2 million company that was really had been around for 20 years, but was really, really struggling. But I had no idea what questions to ask. I showed up on the first day of the job, and the chairman introduced me to. They were having a board meeting. Introduced me and said, "Okay, first order of business. Welcome aboard, Chuck. We're so excited to have you. What kind of programs can we put in place so that we can make payroll next quarter?" And I was like,
You're like, my payroll?
Game on.
payroll? What do you mean? I just sell. I'm not the payroll guy. And wow, what a punch! Like, talk about not seeing that Mike Tyson punch come.
Yeah.
But I learned how to run a business, and then, I sat down, I didn't panic, and I said, "Okay, what do I got to do?" And I figured it out, and had success, and we exploded their revenues in just a couple of years. And it filled in a couple of blocks for me that helped me complete the puzzle, right? And now I take a lot of pride in it, even to this day. Like, Scott and I don't talk about profitability and stuff like that when it comes to closing deals, but I think about it every step of the way. Like, how do I make sure that we're doing a good deal for us, for the client, for the way we're going to implement this, and for the long-term success that we want to have ultimately with this customer? And that defining moment happened to me that day in East Rutherford, New Jersey, overlooking Giant Stadium, when I got hit like a Mike Tyson punch with that question and had no idea what the hell to say.
He was talking about your payroll, Chuck. How are we
Yeah,
gonna get you
yeah.
pay?
No, no, no. I was a 20 something kid back then, man. I was collecting peanuts,
Yeah. Yeah.
truly.
Hey, speaking of 20 somethings, Billy and I have kids that are entering the job world slash in the job world, and it just seems to be tougher sledding these days. Call it AI, call it disruption in the market, especially in tech. I'm sure healthcare, Billy, is no different. But any pieces of advice for our audience out there that's trying to, what you've interviewed a ton of people. Recently, you've interviewed a bunch of people. What should they be thinking about? You got a couple pieces of advice as they're going into that interview, or maybe it's during the interview, something that stands out to you. Any pieces of advice there, I think, would be welcome.
Yeah, I think it's the persistence and consistency, of the interaction, because nowadays I've found that the 20 somethings aren't as prepared to battle for a job or battle for a win as maybe a few decades ago, like when we were getting started. I mean, think about it. I don't know about you. I had to wear a suit and tie every day. I had to get in my car, drive to an office, work a full day, 10 hours, 12 hours, then drive home and then try to have a life. And the competition was really, really, it was a lot more challenging in my opinion than it is today. And I only say that because I'm mentoring my own kids. I got 2 kids out of college that are working and I had to help them fight for interviewing for jobs and even just with my own kids sometimes who I've raised as athletes who are mentally tough and like to compete, oh yeah, I sent an email. I haven't heard anything. I guess they're not interested. Like, are you kidding me? You got to send 100 emails. You got to show up at their front door. You gotta, attack him in the park. No, you get my point, right? I mean, so
But
I
that, Chuck, that's the stuff we did.
old
I
school,
knew what
yeah,
my docs looked like. I'd be waiting by their car when they walked out of the operating room just to get 5 minutes.
yeah. I
You were
mean, old
stalking.
school.
That's what you had to do.
It's all old school, in my opinion. That's the difference maker because now everyone can have the perfect resume, the perfect cover note, thanks to our cousin Claude. Um, but they're not gonna. How do you demonstrate um, the determination that you're going to do whatever it takes to be successful in a role, right? You've got to think outside the box beyond what many of those coming out of college have had to do. So that's, I think, some of the best advice I give to those that I mentor on a regular basis. Just teaching them the old school ways. There's one guy that I had mentored through a friend of my daughter's who had, just asked me for help after he graduated. And so I started meeting with him and helping him. And he spent 7 months winning a job and the determination of not giving up and keep going after it. And, it was refreshing to see a young professional like that roll up his sleeves and not rely on all of the lazy tools that are available. So I agree with you, Billy. Old school stuff, I think, is going to win the day because there are a lot of smart, sharp people and unbelievable, tools that can help you.
And I don't have the answer either, but I'm trying every angle possible. So even with my own kids, I'll tell them what I think's important, but then I try to have them, talk to Scotty, talk to other friends of mine, just reach out, and hopefully they're getting enough repetition of the feedback that they start to apply it. But I was cracking up the other day. I addressed a group of interns, was giving them some advice, and one of pieces of advice was, as different execs come and talk to you, make sure you reach out, set up a one-on-one with them, send them an immediate follow-up of a couple takeaways from your discussion and all of that. And I guess it's been almost 2 weeks. Not my daughter's part of that. Not even a single response, not a follow-up, nothing. One person hit me up on LinkedIn. So it
Yeah.
just cracks me up. You can tell them all day long, and are they really listening? So I'm
Chuck,
trying to figure it out.
Chuck, they tuned him out. I mean, that's what happened.
Well, actually, my daughter was great. She's like, you talk too much, Dad. It was just too much. That's cool.
Problem is, we're not on Snapchat. That's it. Those kids live on
That's
Snapchat.
right. That's right. That's why we're working on. We got to be a little tighter on goats because they'll listen to the shorts, but I don't think
Yeah.
anyone's listened to a full episode.
Hey, I think it's probably a combination, Chuck, old school and new school. I
Yeah.
think you're doing a really nice job of outlining what does old school mean. And I think you're doing a really good job demonstrating in the field, right? And I think your team will follow you because of that. A friend of ours interviewed at BMO.
Mhm.
He's on the finance side. Couldn't get it. They didn't get invited back. Just missed the job. Stayed persistent. And he actually doubled down on the AI piece. And Billy makes fun of me because I'm AI this and AI that. I think the old school of some of the things that you're talking about combined with being being a practical user of AI. And that doesn't mean just research. So he actually developed his own AI model. I won't get into the details here, but up to and including potentially launching something into the market.
Wow.
So that is what got their attention. And that is what landed him this investment banking job. They were so enamored about his ability not only to glom onto AI, but to actually get to a point where you're going to launch his own model. So I think the answer is probably both. And just like Billy tells his kids, I'm telling my kids the same thing. Be a student. It's not just the AI piece, but earn your voice. And, what is that human element? How are you connecting with that person based on,
Mm.
I don't know, is it the AI research? Sure. But I think it's a combination.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I completely agree.
Yeah, you got to lean into AI for sure, but also use your brain. Critical thinking still matters, and read the news right now. There's a lot of people coming out, still saying that a lot of the jobs that won't be replaced are sales jobs, right? With AI, because people want that personal connection. They want to have conversations. And they want to have those relationships. So I think lean into it, certainly learn it, but be creative with ways you put yourself out there. And I mean, man, we're talking about basic fundamentals. Just hold eye contact while you're having a conversation with someone. Like, little things do matter over time. There's nuances, but if you want to leave a positive impression on someone, right? Ask some thoughtful questions, pay attention, follow up. It's not that hard.
Yeah. And Chuck, a couple more things and then we'll cut you loose, man. Thanks again for joining
Sure.
us.
My pleasure.
Um, I don't want you to implicate anyone on the ServiceNow side. So let's just say I'm one of your jobs that you've had in the past. And I want our listeners to learn about the advice of what to do, but I want them to also listen to the advice of what not to do. So as you've been around a lot of salespeople in your career, are there a couple traps that you've seen that salespeople fall into where they're just because of these traps are just not going to make it?
Yeah, it's they give up way too soon. The common theme of I've called, I've left a couple messages, I've sent a couple emails, I've got nothing. He's not interested or she's not interested. And that drives me absolutely crazy. I've had that happen everywhere and anywhere I've ever gone. It was certainly part of the conversations I had with with the team that I'm now managing at ServiceNow. And I love telling them one simple story, um, just to blow up, and refute. Don't ever assume that a lack of reply means a lack of interest. And it all goes back to a great story I think will be a good way to wrap this up. Um, I was selling into UnitedHealth. There was a guy that ran their benefits business out of Indianapolis, so everyone knew this was the man. Like, you gotta get to this guy if you wanna do anything. And literally for more than 2 years, I did everything I could think of. I mean, I was calling this guy, leaving him very thoughtful, like, I would role play my voicemail before I would actually call him and leave it, you know?
You are
I would
crazy.
I would think about exactly how I wanted if I got his secretary on the phone, how I would wanna interact with her. I would think I would send my emails to myself before I send it to him and see how it would be. I did all of that kind of stuff. I would do my, one of the big things I like to do is print one page glossy materials that I can handwrite on top of, and I'd leave them, in his office. Hey, don't call me. We're both too busy, but hey, if you need something, here's how I can help. That kind of stuff. For 2 years, this guy. I mean, I was convinced that if I was on fire and he walked by, he wouldn't throw a bucket of water on me. I mean, I could not get his attention. And then one day, I'm in Minneapolis at the United Healthcare Lane, location in, Minnetonka, and my phone rings. I see 317. I'm like, what's this?" I answer it. "Hey, it's Chuck." He's like, "Chuck, Pat Stam, how you doing?" I'm like, "Patrick, how are you? I'm great. What's going on?" He's like, "Hey, I need your help. When's the next time we can get together?" I'm like, "Well," boom, right into a conversation. And I'm saying to myself, I've never talked to this guy,
Yeah.
and he's acting like we know each other. And long story short, he happened to be in Minneapolis, right across the highway at one of their other buildings. I said, "Listen, I'm in Minnetonka, but I could come to Indy and see." He's like, "Chuck, I'm in Minnetonka. Where the hell are you?" I said, "Well, I'm in a cafe. I'm grabbing a sandwich." He's like, "You want a sandwich?" He's like, "Yeah, grab one for me and for Jim and for Mary Joe." Okay. So I grab sandwiches. I go over there. We spent 3 hours whiteboarding what a claims processing solution would look like for interaction and issue management, right?
Wow.
One of the hotspots of what we're doing at ServiceNow. Long story short, that application was the largest system I sold a customer in my history of my job. That application to this day processes almost 2 billion with a B claims transactions every month. It is the largest, decentralized claims processing platform for pending claims that don't pay. They, when they fail, they go through this process. Here's the real funny part of the story, though. His wife, Lisa, also worked at United, ended up coming to the employer I was with as an industry marketing person. And we're at sales kickoff one year, and I'm telling her this story at the end of the night at the bar with a glass of wine. And she literally spit it out. She's like, I guarantee you that idiot had no idea he had never met you before. So she calls him up and puts him on speakerphone, and we talk, and he's like, oh my God, Chuck, I can't believe it. He's like, I got so much shit from you over the years. I just felt like I knew you.
That's so cool.
But the moral of the story was I could have easily flushed him as a prospect if he did. Forget about not returning 2 or 3 emails. This guy didn't return 100 emails. He didn't return at least 50 calls. He didn't return me dropping off materials. I used to bring bagels to his staff in his office and say, "Hey, the courtesy of Chuck, tell Patrick I said hello." I mean, everything I could think of, never got a sniff, and that ended up being the largest deal I ever did in my career.
That's an incredible story. It just shows you that perseverance, man. Never give up. Stay with it.
Yeah, and just don't assume that a lack of, it just means that they just don't see the benefit of working with you at that moment, right? That's the way you got to program your mind. Don't think, oh, they're not interested. At that moment, there's no need for you. They don't have a need for you, and you got to find that moment.
I think the translation I'm hearing from that is your persistence. You are developing a relationship. You just don't know it.
Right.
Yeah. So when he talked to you, he felt like he knew you.
He did. 100%.
And you're like, dude, you don't know me. You never responded to any of my stuff. And guess what? He did know you.
Yeah. It was the funniest moment in my career. Truly. I called my wife up and I was like, you are not going to believe what just happened to me.
That's incredible.
It was like unbelievable, like truly an unbelievable story. And he's to this day, he's since long retired from UnitedHealth, but we're still friends. Whenever I'm down in Florida, I try to see him and his wife, and we'll go out for a nice dinner. And it's just a very, very small, intimate world. You just got to bring that human element always.
Love it, man. Love it.
What a way to
any parting that's great. Great story, Chuck. Thank you for sharing it. Sure. Any parting shots, as a GOAT yourself, any parting shots that you want to leave our audience?
You just got to love it, man. I freaking love going to work every day. I mean, you really find a way to love what you do, because I certainly didn't love making 250 calls a day when I first got started, but I learned how to handle objections. I learned how to have empathy. I learned how to turn some of those people that were cursing at me and telling me to lose their number into opportunities to engage. And then the more you find your happy place, just self-assess, constantly self-assess, and be self-aware. It's nothing more frustrating as a sales leader when team members of my team don't have a self-awareness of the mistakes that they continue to make over and over again. So that would be my parting advice.
And true GOAT, Chuck, is great meeting you. Really impressed. Thank you so much. You're someone we're going to have to come back in the future. So thank you so much.
It's great to meet you too, Billy. I've heard a lot about you as well from the conversation Scott and I have, and I really appreciate this opportunity.
I've got a great opportunity to talk with you about later.
Hey, Chuck, don't take his call. He's going to try to hire you away.
He makes me sign non-competes, Chuck. I can't steal any of his guests.
I would probably blow up his mailbox if he were to try that.
All right.
Thank you, Chuck, man. I hope you have a fantastic night, my friend, and we'll be chatting soon. But thanks for joining.
I'm running to the gym now. I got to coach a basketball game in 25 minutes. So.
Dude, thank you so much. Good luck.
Right. Thanks, guys.
See you, Chuck.
Bye-bye.